Hey, this is Chris with Look Mono Hands. Today I'm going to talk about, is autism a disease? As promised, when I started this blog, or vlog, whatever the hell you want to call it, when I started this series, I said I'd cover issues about autism and Asperger's, and with the elections coming up, Rick Santorum, he's one of the presidential candidates, and I wanted to discuss something that Rick Santorum has been a part of. It's the House version of a bill called H.R. 2421, which is also known as the Combating Autism Act. And I'm sorry I'm looking down. I'm looking at my computer here so I can have my information. It was introduced by Mary Bono, Republican, California, Diana DeGette, and Rick Santorum, and Christopher Dodd, and we in the Senate. But the whole concept is, this is a direct quote from the founder of Cure Autism Now. This bill is a federal declaration of the war on the epidemic of autism. It creates a congressionally mandated roadmap for a federal assault on autism, including requirements for strategic blah blah blah. Now, the reason that I'm discussing this is because this, with him in the running for president, it has become a bit of a hot button issue amongst Aspies and other individuals on the autistic spectrum. And the reason for that is because it defines autism as a disease. Now, for anybody who's not autistic or has Asperger's syndrome or doesn't have Rett syndrome, which are all on the autistic spectrum, any pervasive developmental disorder that falls on the autistic spectrum, it does indeed sound like it is a disease. And honestly, I'm of two minds, honestly. It is a twofold sword here. We as autistics or individuals with autism, people will tell us not to call ourselves autistic, but yeah, don't tell me how to refer to myself. But anyway, those of us that are on the autistic spectrum really chafe at the concept of the word disease. And that's because the word itself bears these negative connotations which are unpleasant for anybody involved. When you think of disease, you think of something that is completely incurable, that, and typically wrongly, people can consider it something that's either caused by a virus or outside influence. What they don't realize is that, and typically also it means that the person's going to die. That's the way people interpret it, even though this really has nothing to do with the definition of disease. Disease is defined, and this is by Webster's, a disordered or incorrectly functioning organ, part, structure, or system of the body resulting from the effect of genetic or developmental errors, infection, poisons, nutritional deficiency or imbalance, toxicity, unfavorable environmental factors, illness, sickness, or ailment. That's pretty straightforward and clear cut. Basically, anything that screws up part of the body and renders a system or organ malfunctioning is considered a disease. But then, I mean, that really appeals to my need for truth, and that's something that I feel very strongly about. I honestly think that truth is important in everything. That being said, another part of me wants to scream, "No, I'm not diseased," and it's a big It's a matter of perception. It's a big thing. When you call autism a disease, you are telling the person who has an autistic spectrum disorder that they are wrong somehow, whether it be mentally or physically or genetically. No matter what the cause, no matter what the result, disease lends an air of wrongness that most of us don't feel. Yeah, dealing with the outside world with an autistic spectrum disorder is difficult. Most people don't really get what's going on in our heads, and that's partially because they have no frame of reference, and partially because we have no frame of reference with which to express it to you. But to call us diseased is kind of insulting, because of the negative implications of the word. A lot of us prefer the word disorder, and that's still a disorder. Basically, is the same thing as a disease, but for some reason it doesn't really seem to chafe as much. But our big debate, and yes, I know I'm saying a lot, but our big debate is having to do with the fact that all these groups want to cure autism. They're not talking about curing those of us who have it. They're talking about wiping it out, like polio or smallpox. And that doesn't sit well with me, because that smacks of eugenics. And honestly, if they're going to work on a cure, they should work on curing those of us who have it to begin with. Though I personally wouldn't change myself for the world. It's taken me a long time, but I've learned to like myself. But with what they're talking about testing in utero. They're talking about elimination of autistic genes, and the only way to do that, honestly, is through abortions and eugenics and slaughter. Unless we can come up with a downline gene therapy, in which case they'll be able to treat us all. But while it's probably for the best, because I wouldn't wish what I went through growing up on anybody, it doesn't sit well with me, because it feels a lot like Nazi Germany. I know, I just invoked a big internet rule. I mentioned Nazi Germany, I mentioned Hitler, therefore I lose the debate. But since this is me talking to you, there's not much debate. You can make all the comments you want, but it doesn't sit well with me. And it may be because the people that are pushing for it are groups like Autism Speaks. And I may have that wrong. There's Autism Speak and Autistic Speak. Yeah, it's Autistic Speak that bugs me. Autistic Speak is a group that has been doing great work, but watch their commercials. You will never see a high-functioning autistic spectrum individual in any of their commercials. They literally portray it as a horror story. Everybody who's on the autistic spectrum is worse than Rain Man, and frankly, somebody needs to slap Tom Cruise for that. It was a great performance, but it wasn't true, not even to the individual that the movie was based on. But they take our life and turn it into this parody, this horrific shamble, this disgusting display, in an effort to play on people's sympathy. And it doesn't sit well with a lot of us. I mean, and I'll in the comments I'll put which one it is. There's Autism Speaks and Autistic Speak. I can't remember which one bothers me the most, but because I'm a little angry right now. But the fact that they do this belittles us all as people, and I think it needs to stop. So, no matter what else you consider when you vote this year, keep in mind that 1 in 88 right now is what they say. Children with autism. The numbers are one in every 88 children has autism, and that's a statistically significant portion of the population. That's more than 1%. And Rick Santorum, if he had his way, that 1% wouldn't have been born. Now, I'm not endorsing anybody. I'm not saying anybody else is better or worse. I'm not saying he's a horrible person, but I know by the number of followers I have, by the number of emails I get, that you people at least enjoy my presence. And if Rick Santorum had his way, I wouldn't be here. Thanks.